She-Ra and the Princesses of Power is finally over. Amazing to think that a show that started with so much controversy and outrage is still generating fake outrage. But if you've seen the show like I have, you recognize what everyone else is missing out on. Nuanced character writing, an enjoyable cast, mostly, an engaging plot that has soap opera levels of shipping going on, and action scenes that are, okay, pretty meh. But it nailed its final season, and that's what I'm here to talk about. Welcome everyone, this is Sarcastic Course, and this is my final review on She-Ra. Going to season 5, I knew several things were gonna happen. That Catra was going to be redeemed, that Catra was gonna happen, and that Hordak would in some capacity turn against Prime for Entrapta. I knew these things were gonna happen, it was just a matter of whether or not it'd be believable. But before we can get to these points, let's talk about some of the other aspects of the story, starting with the main villain himself. Okay, so Prime to me was a great villain who started to get less and less effective as the story went on. He commands such a great presence in the first couple episodes. Prime was directly inspired by real-life cult leaders, and I think that this was a great choice to go with, especially when your other options are just generic evil space emperor. Prime just always seems to be in control of every situation, even treating She-Ra like she's just a nuisance, not even worth his consideration. It's this image of perfection and control that Prime presents. I think that's when he's at his most intimidating. As the season goes on and Prime realizes he isn't in control of the situation, that godlike leader cracks to reveal the angry and petulant man hidden beneath the mask. And once he starts to lose that mask, I was surprised on how much he started to resemble Hordak, showing that many of Hordak's personality flaws, rather than being deviations, come directly from his so-called perfect leader, revealing that he isn't so above his other clones as he would like them to believe. But that said, while I found these enjoyable parallels to look at, I also found him much less interesting as the series went on, and these more typical villain traits kept popping up. A major reason for this decline is because Horde Prime doesn't really develop an antagonistic relationship with any of the main cast. They try to tie Prime to She-Ra by implying that he's fought one of the previous She-Ras in the past, but while I really enjoyed this line,
must have fought her, must have known her face, but I have no memory of it. I've seen so many like her over the years. One by one, all their faces have been lost to oblivion. Just as yours will be.
One of the biggest strengths for She-Ra to me was its ability to build a strong connection between the antagonist and the protagonist. Prime always came off as a threat, but he never sold me that he is the enemy of She-Ra and the rest of the Alliance. Hordak had years of history of being this direct big bad force to the princesses and the Alliance, and Catra had her tortured relationship to Adora, and then her resentment of Shadow Weaver. But Horde Prime had none of that. His focus always remained on acquiring the heart, and the heroes were just an obstacle that happened to be in his way. It's not a bad setup, but the lack of a more personal interest in the conflict really led Prime to slowly going from a great villain to just a good one.
I'm not She-Ra. I'm not a hero anymore. I'm just me. I can't do this alone.
Now moving on to our main hero, I gotta say I like Adora, but she's hit or miss for me. Because 50% of the time I will be engaged with her story, then the other 50% of the time I could care less. Adora's problem is that she is too paragon, and when she's working as the hero, she's only as engaging as the characters she plays off of. When she's with Catra, she's great. When she's being her regular dumbass self, even better. But when Adora hits that self-sacrificing, the world is on my shoulders phase, I check out. At the end of the season, when they were teasing the fact that Adora might die, I was like, get out of here, man. You're not gonna pull that off. Sadly, I think this is probably the season where I am the least invested in Adora's hero's journey, even though I'm really invested in her character and her relationships with her friends. And Catdora, of course. And my god, the Catdora scenes. Yes, I call it Catdora. Deal with it. That kiss at the end was a cathartic moment for my soul. Also, what was cathartic, I really liked She-Ra's new design, though I still don't like the hair poof. But that's more of a me thing. I was never a supporter of the compression shorts, and seeing her switch to pants is just a relief. Next, I want to bring something up that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about, and that is Glimmer.
Serve to celebrate. I'm going to make us a special dinner for tonight.
You?
Because she feels totally sidelined this season. In season 4, she had almost as much screen time as Adora, and was basically the second main character. But now, in this season, she kind of feels like she's being put in the background. She's still there, of course, and she contributes where she can, but Glimmer isn't given the chance to stand out. Glimmer's position as the leader of the Alliance kind of seems like it's been taken over by Natasha, and despite her dad being possessed, she never talks about this, or tries to rescue him like the team does for Spinnerella. Glimmer stepping up as a leader as the seasons went on has been a major part of her character arc, and in season 5, she is stuck firmly in the supporting role. And as much as I shit on her, she is a good character after season 1, and I thought that this season would continue to expand her role. But instead, all we got was her romance with Bo that you probably didn't even recognize unless you're looking for it. Which I support if it's a play on the typical treatment of LGBT romances in the story. Otherwise, it feels very underdeveloped. I still like her, but it just feels like a lot of character potential was left on the table. Now, moving back to the topic of villains, let's talk about Shadow Weaver.
You're welcome.
Shadow was easily the biggest wild card going into the season because I was never quite sure what the writers were gonna do with her. Going from direct antagonist to manipulator on the side of the heroes, I was never under the impression that they were going to redeem her, and in this season, they very much stuck to that characterization. With her main goal, the thing she wants more than anything else isn't to defeat Horde Prime, it's to get magic back, to increase her own power. But then just when she was about to reach her goal, she makes the decision to give her life to save Catra and Adora. This last minute change of heart was surprising to me, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. This is very much a Vader redemption, where after a lifetime of abusing and hurting others, they sacrifice themselves to help someone else. Which, we're left with the question, did that redeem her, or did she just do one good thing before she died? In my sarcastic summary, I framed this sacrifice as less of a sacrifice and more of Shadow screwing over Catra and Adora one last time. By giving her life to save them, Shadow was able to reopen and complicate her relationship to her what are basically her children. Because at this point in the story, they both realize what a monster she is, but by performing that one final good deed, she made it that much harder for Adora and Catra to move on, having been given one last example that their abusive mother truly cared for them. But in the show, it's much less clear what motivates Shadow to give her life for the two of them. After seeing how much her children hate her make her realize she needed to do something to help them? Or did Shadow simply prioritize returning magic to Etheria over her own life? We're not given any clear answers though. In my mind, I do think she was actively trying to make amends with her daughters, if just on the basis of this one line.
It's too late for me. But you, this is only the beginning for you. I'm so proud of you, Catra.
This really pushes the idea that Shadow is trying to give Catra some form of closure, giving her that small bit of recognition that Catra has spent her whole life craving. But this really felt a bit too clean and convenient for me. One thing I truly do love is just the moment where she finally takes off her mask and tells them, "You're welcome." I think this brings Shadow back to her original character. Her last words, rather than being a declaration of love or some other sentimental message, Shadow always felt that Catra and Adora were ungrateful to her. She didn't have to raise them, but she did. To me, it reads as her coyly saying how she doesn't have to do this for them, but is doing it anyway. So they should be grateful and appreciate her, making this less of a true sacrifice and more of a nudge at them to reevaluate their relationship and opinion of her. I don't think that Shadow didn't care at all for Catra and Adora, but I definitely think she would never place them above her own interests and magic. We see in this season Shadow was willing to sacrifice Adora by not telling her about the dangers of using the failsafe. Shadow didn't redeem herself by dying, but she certainly gave everyone else a lot to think about by going out the way she did. And I think that's a good ending for her. Because like many abusive parents, her emotional connection to her kids is a complicated one. And even if they hate her, they still have that lingering sense of affection for her. And this sacrifice will make that relationship stay complicated for the rest of their lives. As complicated as Shadow was, I think there's something we can all appreciate about this season. Ships. Lots and lots of ships. This show fully supports LGBT rights, and that is cool. I've read in my comment section that some people think that She-Ra is, too gay, that it shouldn't have an agenda, that having this many gay couples is unrealistic. To that I say, nah, that's not a problem. That's a selling point. People can complain all they want, but I see all of this representation as a good thing. Do you know how many boring harem anime are made every year? The answer is too many, but people enjoy it and no one forces me to watch it, so I don't complain. Almost all the characters in She-Ra are fun. That's all they need to be. I'm glad that Natasa got more time to shine. Spinner, sadly, still feels like Natasa's +1, but they have a healthy relationship and not every character has to be a standout. Some of them just have to be serviceable. I'm not taking that back. When this show started, the refusal to confirm any characters annoyed the hell out of me because it was all right there and they were doing nothing with it. Then season 5 came out and everyone is gay and in love, and that's great. And if you complain that the show is too gay, that's more your problem than the show's.
You're very technologically advanced.
Now, talking about love, fun, and all the other great stuff the show did, I expected this season to be way darker. After the anxiety and the horrors of war that was season 4, I figured that the show would ramp up the angst for the final season, because that's what most shows tend to do, but that didn't happen. Things were still dangerous and there was still a sense of tension, but this season was more lighthearted than I was expecting. Rather than it all being framed as things are awful, it leaned more heavily into the idea that people are fighting and things can change for the better. The Under the Sea party was the pinnacle of the let's still have fun part of the story. Did we need to see Mermista and Siak being adorable together? No. Do we need to see Scorpia sing and flex on how ripped she is? No, but I can't say that I didn't enjoy watching it. Whether or not you actually enjoyed seeing these scenes in this more lighthearted tone is something I think we all need to come up to our own conclusions about. One thing that I did hate about this season, though, was the brainwashing of Mermista and Scorpia. Now these two are by far my favorite of princesses, which is why I was extremely disappointed that they were reduced to brainwashed drones for the last half of the season. But on thinking about it, I realized that Scorpio and Mermista had way more time to be developed than the rest of the supporting cast, so it made sense that if you were gonna sideline some princesses, they'd be the one to choose. It would've been awesome if they could still be around, but if they were still around, Natasa and Spinnerella would not get as much time as they did. Perfuma got her normal 1 episode a season to be important, but even then, Frosta still got pretty sidelined. And also, this bears mentioning, the decision to get Scorpio and Mermista out of the story like this is narratively very convenient for Catra, who between mistreating Scorpia and the destruction of Selenius, not having to hang out with the people that you have personally wronged the most, gives her a much easier path to redemption. This isn't a critique, it's just something that I think needs to be pointed out. I guess I put this off long enough. Okay, let's talk about Catra.
Adora! I'm sorry! For everything!
Catra was, is, and probably will always be my favorite character. This makes me completely biased on this subject, but screw it, I love this cat. Now, in this season, surprising nobody, Catra finally joined the good guy team, which I always saw coming, but the question remains, did they handle her redemption well? And my answer to that is yes, and no. Starting out with the positives, I loved that Catra's decision to change is her internal choice to make. No one is pleading with her to be a better person or demanding that she change her ways. Catra realized on her own that she's unhappy and seeks to better herself. Catra isn't changing so that she can be with Adora. Catra is changing because she wants to. And one thing that I really enjoyed about her redemption arc, and the thing that makes it so much more believable to me, is that her redemption is tied directly to Catra's emotional maturity. Where many of her worst actions in the previous seasons are tied to her lashing out or being unable to deal with her emotions in a positive way. Therefore, when she's trying to outgrow these tendencies and start opening up about her mistakes, it makes her story way more powerful, and to me feels way more cathartic. By fixing the root problem of her issues, I feel like it makes her transition from a complicated and bad to complicated and good, as she realizes there's a less destructive and healthier way to deal with her problems. And it really got to me how even after everything she learned and went through, she still snaps back to her old ways when she thinks Adora is abandoning her again, only for Catra to realize, oh no, I'm making a mistake, and that Adora needs her. Catra is always the character to walk away, so to have her walk back is an incredibly satisfying sight to behold. Catra's redemption does run into a small hiccup though, because its biggest strength is also its weakness. Her story is very cathartic as we watch her make amends and connect to the people she's hurt over the course of the series. But the show focuses solely on the individual. Catra I love, but she's also the mastermind behind the destruction of a lot of Etheria. And who knows how many people died in those attacks. But these things are never brought up. When the other princesses don't trust her, it's always like, oh, it's that bad person, that villain. Not, oh, it's the war criminal. And like everything that's tied to the war in She-Ra, the show never goes too deeply into the costs of war or ever show us evidence of people actually dying. But just from what we've seen, yeah, some people definitely died during those attacks, and it's annoying for it to never be brought up. I also think that everyone should not have forgiven Catra, or we should get at least one scene of Catra getting isolated from the group. And again, if there was going to be a character to not forgive Catra, it would have been Vermista. And she's not here to do that, so it's convenient, but I can spot the tricks in the writing, and that just takes me out of it a little bit. Now, some people didn't want Catra to be redeemed, with their argument being that the narrative of an abuser being so easily forgiven by those she hurt sends the wrong message, which is a fair point to make. But I think that this view omits some key elements, namely the fact that Catra herself is a victim of abuse and perpetuating the cycle that she found herself in. If the story ended with Catra not being redeemed, the message of the story would be, if you're a bad person, there's no hope for you. If you've messed up, sorry, you can't make a change, which I think would be an even worse message to send. I would say that Catra had a good redemption story, even if there's some material that should have been covered but wasn't, because at the end of the day, She-Ra has always been a show about characters, with world building taking a backseat. We are a bit spoiled when it comes to redemption arcs because Zuko gave us the best one ever, where he had an episode to make peace with every member of Team Avatar, when honestly, most redemption arcs are nowhere near that good and are typically one good choice after spending seasons of being a monster, and suddenly everyone forgives him. Speaking of which,
I am Hordak, and I defy your will.
Look, Hordak and Entrapta are adorable together. No one is denying that. But Hordak doesn't have a redemption so much as he realizes he'd rather not be Prime's slave. Vermista said it best.
So glad you're here.
So are we all just like okay with this?
I don't think much of Etheria would be okay with having him just walk away scot-free. The best case scenario for Hordak is that he stays out of everyone's sight and just hangs out with Entrapta. He's saved by his association with the little wrench goblin, but thinking about it for too long leads you down a path you don't want to go. I still really enjoy his character, but I kind of feel like it was like, oh, big catharsis. Okay, let's sweep this under the rug quickly before people start questioning it. It would have gone the way of the rest of the story, which I don't want to happen, but it's not good. She-Ra was a show that surprised me. When the first trailers came out, I wasn't wowed. And the first time I sat down to watch it was more to spite the neckbeards that were shitting on the show than anything else. And now that we've reached the conclusion, I'm really glad that I did. She-Ra is a good show with great characters and moments. While the action scenes were never stunning, it was the personalities and emotional conflicts that kept me watching. I would happily watch an AU of these characters just going to college and hanging out. Now, the show isn't for everyone, but I would still recommend it to everyone I know and ask them to give it a try, because chances are they'll find one character to latch onto that will keep them watching. While it has dud episodes and characters, it's a fun experience to watch, the conclusion is satisfying, and it's a ride I can see myself taking sometime soon. This has been my review of She-Ra Season 5. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best. Hey everyone, just want to take a small break from cartoons to let you all know that I'm promoting 5 charities, and down below in my details, we have a major epidemic in the US of people being oppressed and victimized because of the color of their skin, and this has to stop. So, in support of Black Lives Matter, I've linked the following charities down below. If you're able to donate, do so. It doesn't have to be much. We all want to live in a better world, and until all people are treated equally, things will never get better. Help make a change and donate. And if you disagree, congrats. I hate you more than the horse.